Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Writing Journey. I'm Michael.
I'm Sunny.
And I'm Matthew.
We're a dad, a mom, and a teenage son. We each recently took up fiction writing. We're definitely not experts, but we hope you'll enjoy hearing about our journey and maybe get inspired to start your own. Welcome to episode 1. The purpose of our show is to share our experiences with other new writers, to help improve and motivate our own writing by talking about it, to spend time together, being creative and learning something new, and most of all, having fun. Today we'll do brief introductions of each of us and give you an idea as to why we're starting our writing journey.
The format will be that we have 4 questions that we go around and answer each in our own separate way.
Sounds good. I'll get things started. The first question is just for each of us to talk a little bit about ourselves and our current writing projects. I'm Sunny, and I'll go first. I'm the mom of the family. I have been a higher education professional for quite a few years, and so I've done a lot of writing in my professional roles, but I've never really done any fiction writing. And so when I decided to get started, I really wanted to just do something that would be fun and kind of totally different from what I did as a writer at work. I have written a fairly short fantasy novel, and I'm in the process of exploring a new novel, which would be in the lines of a cozy mystery. So that's kind of where I am with my current projects.
All right, Matthew, how about yourself?
Well, I am a 17-year-old high school student, and I don't have as much to say about myself because, well, I haven't lived as long as either of my co-hosts here. But I've been a reader my whole life, so I decided to start writing more consistently a couple of years ago. And right now I'm working on a sort of a light editing draft of the first novel that I wrote, which is short and not very good, but hopefully I can get it to a point where it is more readable and something that I can look back on and be moderately proud of.
And back to me, Michael. And I started writing because these guys were writing and wanted to join in on the family fun of it. Never having done anything creative. I've been in healthcare for my professional life, and I just wanted to try something creative in order to join in with the family and see what would happen. So let's go back to Matthew again. What made you want to write fiction? Because you were sort of the impetus behind all this.
Yeah, I sort of brought it up briefly already, which is that I've always loved reading. I've been a big fantasy and science fiction reader my whole life, and that sort of seemed to lead naturally into writing for me. It seemed like, if I'm searching for new hobbies, new things to do, I may as well try writing the things that I enjoy reading so much. So I've been sort of from the beginning trying to accept that my writing is not going to be very good. And I think that has really helped me to just keep doing it and having fun with it.
Yeah. And when Matthew was really first starting on his first real novel, I kind of picked up and wrote on his coattails a little bit because it was the middle of the pandemic and I was kind of looking for something creative to do, something different. I had tried knitting and some other hobbies that hadn't really stuck. And so I decided, since I already was, a pretty proficient professional writer, to go ahead and give fiction writing a try. And because I'd been reading some fantasy, courtesy of Matthew, I decided to give that a try as the first genre. And like Matthew said, he really introduced the idea that our writing was not going to be good. And that was really, really helpful. I really don't think I would have started if Matthew hadn't told us to, just expect it to be bad. Does that sound terrible?
That sounds truthful. And I also am writing fantasy as well. It's the genre that I have read the most of, and joined these guys a little bit later. So I've got a rough draft of a fantasy novel. I don't really know what kind of subgenre it might be yet.
Sort of an adventure quest fantasy, I would say.
Yes, these guys have had the misfortune of having to read some of my rough work.
And I know we're talking a little bit more about genre in upcoming shows, so we'll have some more conversation about, what we're each doing and kind of how we landed there. The next question is what we each consider our strengths and weaknesses as writers. Michael?
I'll start. My strength is that I'm very motivated. My weakness is the writing. I have not written anything. I never had wanted to write. I'm not one of those people that grew up, reading and always wanting to be a writer and writing short stories. I never did any of that. So I'm a poor writer, admittedly, and I'm already getting much better as I edit along. But it's starting out slow. So strength is motivation, and weakness is, everything else.
That's certainly true. You've had a lot more motivation than either of us, it seems like.
But I also think you're being a little hard on the quality of your writing because, it is improving. And just the fact that you've been able to draft, a sort of modest length novel is pretty impressive. So,
see, this is the benefit of an in-person writing group, that you get real-time support for your self-deprecation.
Yeah, and we definitely we consider ourselves our own little writing club or writing group. And sometimes we do have other members of the family who join in. So maybe on this podcast, occasionally you might meet other members of our family, but the three of us are really the core of our writing group. And so that's why we decided it would be fun to podcast about it. So strengths and weaknesses still, Matthew.
I would say as a fantasy writer, one of my biggest strengths is probably sort of the world building and like the setting aspect of it, and just sort of thinking of cool ideas. Maybe not being able to tie them in exactly how I want to, but just having the ideas in the first place is something that I am good with. A relative weakness is dialogue. I've noticed in a lot of my writing that I don't have enough dialogue, and just in general, it can be either stilted or too informal. Just a lot of problems overall with that.
Why do you think those two things, why do you think you're strong in world building but weak in dialogue?
I think the world building probably comes from my taste in books. I read a lot of sort of thick, epic fantasy books which focus on world building, and that's a big interest for me. The dialogue.
Yes. I don't know if any of our listeners are fantasy readers, but Matthew truly, and Michael too, read some of the thickest books I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't know that your strength comes from reading those books, because I read those books as well. I think it's from when you were really little, you and your brothers, always sort of working on world building projects and making things up, and the imaginative play when you guys were young, and role playing games that you guys made up on your own. So I think that strength comes from an older place in you.
That does make sense.
And a lot of drawing and art too. I feel like that's, even though you don't do a lot of drawing, although maybe, I don't know, have you ever done like a map or something related to one of your books?
Yes, I have done. I have done a lot of maps in my time.
Yeah.
All right, Sunny, what about you? Your biggest strengths and weaknesses as a writer?
Well, each of the three of us is different. And for me, my biggest strength is actually the writing itself. My prose is generally strong. And
I'm not really sure what prose means exactly, but
I think that comes from my, many, many years of professional writing and the work that I've done in my job. But my weaknesses, I don't know. I guess certainly I found it hard to get started in terms of the creative side of the writing. I got a little bogged down in how to come up with a plot. Unlike Matthew, I'm really not good at world building. I don't know. My mind just doesn't really go there to, trying to figure out what the world is like and what it looks like and what the magic and the government and the social structure like. So I think my strength is the writing, and my relative weakness is all the kind of structural stuff that goes into storytelling, because that's not the way that I've been accustomed to writing.
All right, and now let's think about and talk about what our goals are as a writer. I'll start myself. I don't really know is the short answer. My original goal was to get involved with what you guys were doing. And also, once I got into it, I really wanted to have a completed book that's decent. And I'm not sure exactly what decent is,
Right.
but I want, at this stage now, I really want to have a book that I kind of feel good about, which I don't yet. I have a rough draft that I feel less than good about, and it needs a lot of work. And I know it's not necessarily the right thing to do to sort of keep working on this book. It's the first thing that I ever wrote, and it might be better to just sort of scrap it and move on to other things, but I feel invested. So I'm going to stick with this. As far as longer term goals, I don't know. I tend to get a little overexcited about things. So I think, yeah, I should write this book and I should start an author website and I should, sell it and I should publish it and I should make more books and I should retire from my regular job. And so that all sounds very unreasonable if you actually looked at the things that I'm writing, but I can't help but have a little bit of that goal in there. But the other goal, the sort of background goal, is just to keep writing with you guys because it has been fun and it's just been a nice connection for us all. So long-term goal is to systematize things and have us just keep doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And maybe have it turn into something else. But medium, I at least want to have one reasonable book that I am not embarrassed to show people.
That makes a lot of sense.
How about you, Matthew? You're young. You have long time horizon for goal setting.
It's true. Yeah. And I think that has certainly impacted the way I look at the writing compared to you, because I think more about like improving my writing and just having fun with whatever I'm doing, because I'm not really thinking about, or at least not thinking too much about, like becoming commercially successful, publishing, that sort of stuff. I mean, obviously it would be interesting and cool to do that, but at some point. But my main thing at the moment is to sort of just keep improving, keep writing, keep having fun with it. Mom?
Yeah. I guess like Michael, I'm not really completely sure what my long-term goal is. My short-term goal is to just continue to do it as a creative, fun outlet. I'd really like to explore some different genres. I did start out with the fantasy because that's kind of what we were reading at the time, but I'd like to explore some other genres as well. And I don't know how it fits into my long-term plans, whether it just stays recreational or whether it becomes something that, is a piece of how I earn a little bit of money or, have something creative that I can share with other people. So I'm kind of open to see what comes along with it, which is unusual for me because I tend to be more of a planner. But when it comes to this, I don't really have a big long-term plan. Like both of my co-hosts have said, it's really been fun for the three of us to kind of be our own little writing club and to have something that we talk about at night in the living room and, that we have in common, especially Matthew's 17 now. And, that's just an age where it's really nice to have something new in common with your teenage son. So as long as it's fun and everybody's doing it, then that's kind of good enough for me.
Well, very good. That was our introduction or your introduction to us. We'll be continuing on with another podcast next week. Thanks for joining us today and good luck with your own writing journey.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.